It wasn't gunfire that broke the WWII war machine. It was silence. In a quiet English mansion surrounded by fields and fences, a new kind of war was being fought. One without uniforms, trenches, or glory. The Second World War had torn Europe apart. Cities burned, families vanished, and hope became a rationed commodity. But deep in the English countryside, in a place few had ever heard of, a group of civilians were preparing to fight with pencils, paper, and sheer intellect. This was Bletchley Park, an unassuming estate that would become the nerve center of the most secret battle of the war, the battle for information. As the bombs fell over London, the war's front lines shifted from the skies to the mind. Britain faced annihilation not only through force, but through ignorance. German submarines prowled the Atlantic, sinking Allied ships faster than they could be built. Each attack was coordinated through a coded message, transmitted across the airwaves, encrypted by a machine called Enigma. To the Allies, it was a mystery wrapped in metal, a code so complex it seemed alive. Every day, the settings of Enigma changed, creating hundreds of trillions of possible combinations. It was said to be unbreakable. Yet in that belief, the Germans made their greatest mistake. The British government began recruiting minds unlike any other. Mathematicians, linguists, chess champions, and crossword solvers. Anyone who could see patterns where others saw chaos. These were ordinary citizens called to do the extraordinary. Some came from universities like Cambridge and Oxford. Others were school teachers or writers. They didn't carry rifles or wear medals, but their task was more dangerous than any battlefield mission: to think faster than the enemy. Inside Bletchley Park's cold wooden huts, the air hummed with the quiet energy of minds at war. Equations scrawled on boards, cigarette smoke curling through the night, and the relentless ticking of time. Every second lost could mean another ship sunk, another life gone. No one outside those walls could imagine what was happening within. Even those who worked there knew only fragments of the puzzle, sworn to silence by the official Secrets Act. To the world, Bletchley Park was nothing more than a country estate. To history, it would become the birthplace of modern intelligence and computation. In the stillness of that hidden war, the future of freedom rested not on the battlefield, but in the minds of those who refused to give up on logic, even when the odds defied reason. But behind those guarded gates, no one could imagine the noise that came from silence, the sound of a machine fighting a machine. The Enigma was more than a machine. It was the heartbeat of Hitler's communication network. To the untrained eye, it looked harmless, a small box with keys and rotors, like a typewriter built by a watchmaker. But with every press of a key, it transformed a simple letter into a mystery. Each day at midnight, German operators changed the Enigma's internal settings, creating a new cipher from scratch. A single message could have more than 100 quintillion possible encryptions, an infinity of confusion. Every intercepted transmission was useless gibberish, a storm of letters no human could decipher. The German military believed their code was unbreakable. They were right, until they weren't, and the faint hum of machines. It was here that humanity and intellect intertwined to form what could only be called the human machine. Alan Turing's team in Hut 8 focused on naval Enigma, the most dangerous of all, because every misstep meant another Allied ship lost to the Atlantic. Alongside him worked Joan Clark, a brilliant cryptanalyst who stood out in a world that barely acknowledged women in science. She was calm, meticulous, and quietly relentless. a perfect counter to Turing's restless genius. Yet outside those walls, her talents were diminished by her gender. Inside Bletchley, her mind was indispensable. Together they formed one of the most formidable partnerships in wartime intelligence. Life at Bletchley was a strange mix of exhaustion and revelation. Shifts stretched late into the night, with cups of cold tea scattered across desks and cigarette smoke weaving through the air like fog. The workers faced a brutal paradox. They could not celebrate their victories, nor mourn their failures. Every breakthrough was stamped top secret. Every mistake had consequences they would never see. They worked blind, piecing together fragments of messages, building meaning out of patterns, and trusting that somewhere beyond their comprehension, lives were being saved. To the outside world, they were invisible. They couldn't tell their families what they did, or why they worked such impossible hours. Parents believed their sons and daughters were clerks or radio operators. In reality, they were fighting a war in which thought itself was the weapon. Each decoded message carried both relief and burden, proof that their minds had altered the course of events, but also the reminder that knowledge came with a cost. Within the monotony of endless calculation lay something almost divine, the belief that intellect, not violence, could change the course of history. But the closer they came to breaking Enigma, the more dangerous their knowledge became, and the more invisible their victory had to remain. His theories on computation, ideas that would one day give birth to artificial intelligence, were dismissed as eccentric speculation. And when his private life was exposed, the government that had once depended on him turned against him. He was prosecuted, humiliated, and chemically castrated for being who he was. In 1954, at just 41 years old, Turing died alone. Officially, it was suicide. Unofficially, it was the result of a nation's ignorance toward its own hero. Others at Bletchley fared no better in fame, though their lives continued quietly. Joan Clark remained in the shadows of history for decades, her brilliance forgotten in an era that seldom honored women's contributions. Many of her colleagues spent their entire lives pretending they had done mundane clerical work during the war. It wasn't until the 1970s, almost 30 years later, that the truth began to surface. Declassified documents revealed the full scale of Bletchley Park's achievement, how they had shortened the war by at least 2 years and saved millions of lives. The world was stunned. These were not soldiers, but thinkers, ordinary men and women whose intellect had shifted the course of history. As time passed, historians began to connect the dots. The mechanical mind Turing had built at Bletchley became the ancestor of every computer that followed. The logic, the algorithms, the very concept of machine intelligence, all were born in those wooden huts under the pressure of war. Today, every device that calculates, translates, or predicts owes something to that quiet estate in Buckinghamshire. And yet, for all their genius, the Codebreakers remained humble. They had never sought fame, only meaning. In their silence lay dignity, a reminder that not all victories are meant to be celebrated with noise. Some are carried quietly, in memory, in innovation, in legacy. The final images fade, the empty huts of Bletchley Park, papers scattered across wooden desks, machines resting after their long battle. The voiceover softens. Their war ended in silence, but their legacy speaks in every calculation our world makes today. The story closes where it began, in stillness. But now the silence means something different. It is no longer the silence of secrecy, but of gratitude, of a quiet acknowledgement that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with thought.